Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Ahsan Academy, let me welcome you to a presentation on thoracic wall. In this part, I will discuss the anatomy of rib. So the objective of these sessions are this formation of the thoracic case, and will classify the rib, and will discuss the features of the rib, both typical and atypical. At every stage we will discuss the clinical features and clinical correlations of the features. This is the thoracic case, and this one is the anterior view, and this is the posterior view. So we can see how the thoracic case is formed. It is anteriorly, this bone is the sternum, and if we proceed to the side, you'll find that the costal cartilages are there, which are attached to the anterior end of the ribs. There are 12 pairs of ribs, 12 on each side. These ribs are attached to the thoracic part of the vertebral column. This thoracic part of the vertebral column is formed by the thoracic vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, and in between them there are intervertebral discs. So in this way, this thoracic case is formed. So ribs are the vital elements of this thoracic case. Ribs are classified for better description. Some of the ribs are having common features in all of them. They are typical ribs. So typical rib, each member has the same features, and they are number 3 to 9. So third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth ribs has same features on their surface. So these are together known as typical ribs. Rest of the ribs, like this is the first rib, having some feature which is different in addition to the general features. So this is atypical. In the same way, the second, 10th below, and 11, 12, these are atypical ribs. Ribs are, you see, if you look at this, these are obliquely placed and run from the vertebral body to the sternum and connected to that by costal cartilage. Some are attached to the costal cartilage, some has free anterior end. So this can be classified in a second way. Let us discuss that. This is the second way of classification. They are known as true ribs. Look at this. This is the thoracic vertebra, and ribs running from thoracic vertebra to the costal cartilage, and via the costal cartilage attached to the sternum. This happening for the upper 7. So these upper 7 ribs are known as true ribs. Other name is vertebro-sternal ribs. Look at the 8th one. This rib is attached to the costal cartilage, and costal cartilage has taken it to the costal cartilage above. So it is not going to the sternum. Actually, it is fixed to the sternum via the costal cartilage above. Same thing happening for the consecutive 3. So these 3 are known as false rib or vertebrochondral rib. So 8th, 9th, and 10th are this type of ribs. If you look for the last 2, you will find that these are attached posteriorly to the vertebral column, but anterior end is free. The anterior end has costal cartilage, but it cannot reach the upper one. So it is neither attached to the upper rib or costal cartilage. They remain suspended in the wall of the abdomen. So these are known as floating ribs. All the ribs are placed obliquely. This obliquity is maximum at the level of the 9th rib. This is one typical rib observed from above. So this is showing different parts of the rib, and they are 3rd to 9th rib having this common feature. Let us discuss those. So each rib has anterior end, the posterior end, and intervening shaft. So if we look from the below, this looks like this one, And if we look from behind, this will look like this one. This view will help us to describe the features. You look at this posterior end has one head, and this is the tubercle, and in between this is the neck. So posterior end has head, neck, and tubercle. For the typical vertebra, this head is a bit oval and has articular facet which is divided by a ridge. These two components are there. This is the articular facets also present in the over the tubercle, and this is oval in nature and concavity is there. So this remain attached to, this head is attached to the body of the vertebra, and this tubercular facet remains attached to the tip of the transverse process of the vertebra. These are the area they remain attached, articulated. If we see the shaft, it is carved. You see, this is convex outward and concave inward, and the same thing is twisted also. So the surface become outer and inner, and the border become superior and inferior. So the shaft has superior inferior border, inner and outer surface. This is the inner surface and this one is the outer surface. So at the curvature, this is one point which is having elevation on the external surface. Same thing happening here also. These are known as angles. So the typical rib has two angles. They are very marked on the outer part as an elevation. The curvature, if we look from the above, we'll find that there is some bending here. So these are the angles. This is prominently exist in typical vertebra. And this is the section. You can see close to the lower border, there is a depression. There is a groove. This is known as costal groove. This almost running throughout the length of the shaft in typical ribs. So upper border of the typical rib is rounded and lower border is relatively sharper. And the outer surface is convex and inner surface is convex upper part, but it has a concavity in the lower part. This is known as costal groove. If we see the areas, it gives attachment to the three important intercostal muscles. This is external intercostal, this is internal intercostal, and this is innermost intercostal. So this groove provides area for the upper margin, attachment of the upper margin of these muscles. So this red area, this is the floor of the groove, gives attachment to the middle layer of the muscle, which is known as internal intercostal. And superior leaf gives attachment to the innermost, and this inferior border gives attachment to the external intercostal. So this internal intercostal is this one, this is innermost intercostal, and external intercostal is this one that is attached to the margin. Say this is upper border, and if we draw a line, this is the middle part, this is external part, and this is internal part. So this upper border has three leaves. Mid part gives attachment to the internal intercostal, and outer part external, and inner part innermost intercostal. So these intercostal muscles are remaining there. Look at this. These are the vessels and nerves. Vein is above, then artery, then nerve. So costal groove, we will find this vein, then artery goes a bit down in the upper part of the intercostal space, and then nerve lies here. Each intercostal space contains one group bundle here close to the upper part of the intercostal space, and it starts from upper one. This is the vein remains hidden under cover of this costal groove. This rib remains attached posteriorly with the head It is this head makes a joint with the body of the vertebra. This is corresponding vertebra remains attached to the upper part. This is the corresponding. If it is thoracic uh, 8, then 8 rib is attached here. This is, you see, the this is the intervertebral disc remain attached to the ridge area, and this is to the superior thoracic vertebra. So they together making one joint. This is costocorporal. Corporal means body. This is body of the vertebra. That's why it is so named. It is sometimes also known as costovertebral joint. So this one is a synovial joint, and the surfaces are flat, so it is a plain variety of the synovial joint. This is that joint observed from above. Behind this is the transverse tip of the transverse process, and this one is the tubercle of the ribs. They are making synovial joint, and this is known as costotransverse. Costo means rib and transverse process. So this is costotransverse joint, and this is also plane variety because the surface of attachments, actually joint forming surfaces, are flat. You see this neck is connected to the transverse process by a ligament. This is lying between these two bones, so it is known as interosseous ligament. So this is another type of joint, and it is fibrous type of joint, and this class is known as syndesmosis, costotransverse joint. So three joints by the posterior end of the rib: costocorporeal, costotransverse, and costotransverse syndesmosis. Anterior end, you see, makes joint with the costal cartilage. So this is known as costochondral. Chondral means cartilage joint. This is primary cartilaginous joints. In primary cartilaginous joint, the two participating units is connected by hyaline cartilage. Here, the participating unit is one is bone, another is hyaline cartilage. So this connecting cartilage is also hyaline. So it seems to be the part of the costal cartilage. So we cannot see anything between these two, and that's why it is known as primary cartilaginous joint. This is the first rib. This is atypical. This one is the typical ribs. You can see this is the first rib, obliquely placed here, and this is atypical because this is having some different feature that is not common to the typical one. Look at this. This is the head. So these first ribs are identified, observing that this is acutely placed, and this is carved, very carved. It's short. This ribs is relatively broader than anyone, and it remains flatter. So this is head. Head is small and rounded. In typical one, it is oval and having two facets connected by a ridge. But here we will find that this is a circular, one facet is there. Behind that is the neck, which is rounded. Here it is relatively flatter with superior and inferior border, but it is having a rounded one that connects it with the prominent tubercle. This tubercle is very prominent, and there is actually, if the rib is carved but no twisting is there, the curvature creates the angle, but here is the angle is merged with the tuberosity, so we cannot see tubercle and angles are at the same point, so we cannot see the angle here in the posterior part. This is the shaft. It is not twisted, so it is having inner border, flat surfaces, and outer border. The flat surface, superior surface, and inferior surface. This is anterior end, and it is also flat, broader than any other ribs. Let us discuss the other features. Previous slide has discussed the distinguishing points which are present in the first rib other than that is different from the other ribs. So let us see the features, general features of the first rib. So first rib has posterior end, anterior end, and intervening shaft. Posterior end has head, neck, and tubercle. Head is rounded with single rounded facet. Neck is rounded. Tubercle is very prominent and merges with the angle of the shaft. The shaft has inner border and outer border, superior surface and inferior surface. The inner border has an elevation, pointed elevation. This is known as scalene tubercle that continues on the superior surface as a ridge. There are two groups. Posterior to this ridge is the groove for subclavian artery, and anterior to this is formed by the subclavian vein. So these are known as groove for the subclavian vein and subclavian artery. You can see this is the subclavian vein and forming the groove. This is the subclavian artery forming the groove. And in between these two, this area provides attachment for this muscle. This is scalene anterior muscle. And anterior scalenus muscles or scalene anterior is the same muscle. If you go behind, look behind the arterial impression, the second muscle, middle scalene muscle is there, which remains attached here in this area. So this is the area for the scalenus medius or middle scalene muscle. You can see this is the middle scalene muscle. This is the subclavian artery and this one is the subclavian vein. So with this you can observe that the lower trunk of the brachial plexus is here. So this posterior groove is made for it is formed by the subclavian artery, but it contains also the lower trunk of the brachial plexus. This outer part gives attachment to the serratus muscle. This is serratus muscle. There are some digitations like, and this splits attached to starts from the first rib. So serratus anterior remains attached to the outer part. Outer margin is also providing this attachment. If you go to the internal border, let us see this one. This is the area for the subclavius muscle. This is the subclavius muscle, extends from the clavicle inferior surface to the medial part of, this is the medial part attached to the anterior part of the superior surface of first rib. And now this is the subclavius muscle. If you go to the internal border now, you can see that this area provides attachment to the Simpson's fascia. We will discuss detail of the Simpson fascia in the next slide. This is a very tough connective tissue sheet. Look at this. This is the first rib, and this one is the first thoracic vertebra. The posterior end remains attached here. You see, this is the articulation of the posterior end. So above that vertebra, it is the seventh cervical vertebra. This is the transverse process of the seventh cervical vertebra. So these fascia attached to the inner border, and the tip is attached to the tip of the transverse process of the corresponding sides. Transverse process of the corresponding side of the cervical 7 vertebra. So this is a sheet covering the apex of the lung. This is the apex of the lung, which remain covered by a dome of pleura. This is known as cervical pleura. This part of the apex extends into the neck. So this is exposed under the skin, and it is protected by this dome of pleura, cervical pleura, and a very tough Simpson's fascia is also known as suprapleural membrane. So this together supports this apex from any type of injury, and also when we take deep breathing, these two prevents the swelling of apex of the lung into the neck soft tissue. So we observe this type of swelling in toad. Look at this figure. This is the scalene muscle. This is sometimes continuous with some muscle fiber running from attached to this tip of the transverse process of 7th cervical. So these muscles are, in this case, is considered as the fourth scalene muscle. It is known as scalenus minimus. So These Simpson's fascia often considered as aponeurosis of scalenus minimus muscle. So in that case, there are four scalene muscles. This is the superior surface of first rib, and we can observe up to the head, from head to anterior end. This is showing some important relations. If we consider the head region, head and neck region, the anteriorly some important vessels and nerves goes down or goes laterally. This is the sympathetic trunk. It is running vertically. This two obliquely runs. It is the supreme intercostal vein, and this one is the superior intercostal artery. Lateral most structure is the first thoracic nerve. This first thoracic nerve extends laterally and makes the lower trunk of the brachial plexus, and as that trunk it remains related to the groove for the subclavian artery, with the subclavian artery. So this groove is containing two structure. The anterior part, this groove contains the subclavian vein only, and there are some important attachment, like this is the area for the Simpson's fascia, scalenus anterior, scalenus medius. This is serratus anterior muscle. This is the costoclavicular ligament, means running between the rib and the clavicle. This is the subclavius muscles area, and this is the tubercle area, provides attachment, actually articulation with the transverse process by interosseous ligament. So these are the important attachment and relations you can observe from the superior aspects of the first rib. This is the second rib. This is also atypical, and you can see this is having more similarity with the typical ribs, but carrying some features of the first rib too. This shaft is carved but not twisted totally. This is carved and having this inner border and outer border. Outer surface is sloped, not totally external, and you see the tubercle is there, and angle is also there, but this angle is very close to the tubercle. In first rib there is no angle, and typical rib clean cut angles are there. The external surface of the shaft is convex a bit, not flat like first one, and not outer like typical rib. This is having a very rough area on the outer part in the middle region. This is for the muscle attachment. This is the area for the scalenus posterior. This is the scalenus posterior muscle attached to the outer part of this one. The inner surface of the second rib is smooth, and usually there is no costal groove, but may be present in the posterior part close to the outer border, but it's very short. In case of typical rib, those costal grooves are very long and present all throughout the length of the shaft. This is the lower ribs. 12th and 11th are the atypical ribs. They have the posterior end which contains the head, but there is no neck and no tubercle. The head is continuous with the shaft. The anterior end is pointed, but has a facet-like area to be articulated with the costal cartilage, but it is very narrow. 11th has some feature which is different from the 12th, and it is having a single angle, and maybe slight angulation may be there, and shallow costal groove may be in the posterior part and the inner surface. The movements of the rib. The ribs can move like this one, the mid part, and this type of movement is known as bucket handle. And if you see from the side, this type of movement is also possible, and this is resembling the movement of the handle of the pump. So this is known as pump handle movement, and this is known as bucket handle movement. This pump handle movement is pronounced in the upper ribs, and lower ribs show the bucket handle movements. This one is the bucket handle. So either movement causes increase in the diameter of the thoracic cavity. So this is increasing the anteroposterior. Pump handle causes the increase in diameter of the anteroposteriorly, and bucket handle causes increase in the diameter side to side. So in either case, the thoracic case will increase in size, so negative pressure will be there, and inhalation of the air into the lung will be. So movement of the ribs causes inhalation, and the reposition means this is the passive movement because of the relaxation of the muscle cause exhalation. You see, this is the thoracic case. Rib has contributed more in the formation of the thoracic case. You see, this is the inlet, also known as superior thoracic aperture. This is posteriorly bound by the thoracic vertebral body, first thoracic vertebral body, then the inner border of the first rib, costal cartilage, and the superior border of the sternum, making this opening. This is the boundaries. If you look below, this is the xiphisternal junction. This is the border formed by the fusion of the costal cartilages up to the 10th, then 12th, taking the border to the 12th thoracic vertebra, then thoracic vertebral body. These together forming the inferior thoracic aperture or thoracic outlet. This one is the costal margin, and this fused here, this meets here to form an angle. This is known as subcostal angle, also known as infrasternal angle. These are the intercostal spaces. This is between the ribs and costal cartilage, anteriorly limited by the lateral border of the sternum and posteriorly body of the thoracic vertebra. So this area is known as intercostal space. Thank you very much for remaining with the presentation.